Hello, welcome to another SonicLAB. Today we're looking at the brand new Taiga Keyboard version from Pittsburgh Modular. This thing, you might have noticed, is considerably larger than the original Taiga, which I have here. So just a quick note on the differences. Aside from the obvious, obviously that being the size, there are actually more controls here. So if we look at the oscillators, each oscillator now has a fine control, which is actually a great improvement because it's quite hard to dial, even with a large knob like this, to dial in specific amounts. So now we can tune the oscillators more effectively. The other big difference is the ability to access some of the function controls via this little control section here. And indeed, we've got just overall more function control nearer the surface, which makes the thing actually a lot easier to use. The original Taiga is a kind of hybrid synthesizer. It's got 3 wave shaping oscillators plus a sort of classic filter, so multi-mode filter, plus a resonant low-pass gate. We had a long chat with Pittsburgh Modular back when the original Taiga was released. I got into some nitty-gritty about that. But let's just take a look at the largesse of this thing. I mean, you can't have failed to have noticed. Also, I happen to have a Fulsome Clouds in here, which is my custom faceplate Musical Instruments Clouds. Now, ordinarily what would go here is a plate which covers that, and that's kind of neat little extra thing. So what we have here is a 24 HP bit of additional modular which we can stick in there. There's power built in, and I think, let me have a look, I think the tails, if I do this without breaking anything, there's enough tails for 1, 2, 3 modules in there, you can see. So plenty of capability, so you could put whatever you like in there. I just felt like it had to be Clouds, really, because Clouds is going to affect the sound so much, and I just, you know me, I love that sort of sound. Speaking of the oscillators, these are all wave shaping oscillators, and we get to those, it's exactly the same way. We have a different seed for each one. So if I now press a sine, you can see that we've got basically that sine wave, which is a nice shape, and then bringing the knob round here starts to introduce the wave shaping. Massive fundamental down there. So these oscillators are great sounding oscillators. Different seed via, we've got a cross between a sort of like a triangle and a sine, which is that shape. Again, just a slightly different flavour. Then we go to just triangle wave, then a combination of triangle and saw. This is obviously modulatable. Doing that with the oscillator, with the LFO. And then we have, this one's really nice actually. This is a sawtooth. With a bit of reverb on that. Very interesting shape. Let's take that down. And then a combination between square and sawtooth. It's almost like a notch filter, isn't it? Sounds like a phaser, kind of. And then finally, pulse width, which starts off as a square, comes round, then we can modulate that. I mean, so those oscillators are exactly the same, and they've got just a really kind of a lot of they're kind of cross between complex oscillators and regular oscillators. I'm not going to go through the whole thing again. I encourage you to watch the original piece we did on the Taiga. But suffice to say, there's something just about this mode, this ability to quickly grab. It's such a big difference from this. Even though this has got the same functionality, there's something about having larger surface area to play with that just makes it feel a lot more accessible. It may just be the fact that my eyesight's going, but I mean, this is way bigger than I need to be able to see. It's not that, it's just, it reminds me a little bit, remember the Sledge came out, and I mean, yeah, it was just a VA, but it had a really large control surface, and it was very appealing to play with because it's sort of working in large formats, a bit of a luxury, isn't it, when it comes to synthesizers? Everybody's trying to make everything smaller to cut down shipping costs and faceplate size and stuff. Not so here. And what they've done also is put all the patch points across the top, which is kind of useful for having things out of the way. On the module, they're all on the bottom, so that's fine. I guess you could obviously rack mount this as well in Eurorack. So coming back to the overall site, basically this has wooden end cheeks, 3-octave keyboard, I think it's 37 keys. So the keyboard also has aftertouch, which is available of a separate output up here on the patch bay. So we'll just get onto this section. We've got the octave buttons here. Interestingly, we've also got LFO range, so pressing edit and LFO range. If we go to the full overhead, what happens here is that basically sets the LFO range to be slow or fast, and the same for this guy. Nice little feature. Additionally, these are all the functions that we have with the function generator, starting off with a 0 to 5 volt. Basically, that sets the amount of depth that comes out of the multi-output right here. Next one is the LFO. Again, this is the depth. This is just a triangle LFO that's rated to the clock. Pressing and holding, you should be able to see those indicators. This is for clock division. So the master tempo, moving when you're pressing and holding the button gives you clock divisions. And then there's the trigger. This is triggered on a note on, and again, pressing and holding gives us the decay, and this is triggered from a MIDI note on as it comes in. And then finally, we've got the random voltage, pressing and holding, again, just gives us the clock division. Really nice and easy, and it makes those functions kind of much easier to get to. And those functions are exactly the same in the original Taiga. So I think what I'll do is I'll just play a few sounds and maybe go through a few patch ideas and just give you my impressions of this synth. I think it's released today, or as close as I've managed to publish this as to the release date. So I'll now crack on. Okay, here's a patch. Got an arpeggiator running. Pretty basic. Going to bring in the cloud, which is set to a sort of cascading delay. Bring a bit of mod. Second oscillate. This is really nice. This is that sort of square and triangle. Then I've got this one. I've switched the pitch off, which if you press shift, you can switch the pitch tracking off. So now I've got that modulating. But I could switch the... Let's bring the reverb up on the clouds. And then I've got the square wave out of LFO1, which is running at this pitch. Going to go into the freeze. Now, I sounds good doing that. But it's just, you know, this is a sort of in-house patch. I'm using something I put in the modular slot, and I'm just using the 3 oscillators with cross-patching and all kinds of stuff. So there's one patch that we could do. Let's try another. Oscillator 1. Which is just doing that lovely thing with a bit of wave shaping of LFO 2. Gives it that really nice, almost like a kind of dual peak bandpass filter, but there's no filter involved. And then what I'm doing is I've got oscillator 2, which is a square wave, but I'm going into the preamp, which I bring the level up here. I'm not bringing it out, and then so I'm really gaining it up. And then oscillator 3, I've got basically a square, a triangle wave with a little blip on it, which is actually all then going through the low pass gate in dynamics mode, which I've mapped the pitch wheel function, multifunction 5 volt out, which goes into the response, so I can change that. So let's just bring up, and I'm going to bring the effects in. Now I'm going to dial down the dynamics. Let's bring in the low pass resonance. And sort of double up, so I've got an envelope on this one, an envelope on this one. And it's just big, isn't it? Let's get a bit of verb on. There's something about the drive in here. Sounds like early Human League, doesn't it? Sort of reproduction. Okay, in this patch, I'm coming out of the clock, and I'm going into the dynamics processor, which is giving me this clock. That's going into the clouds, which is just adding that extra bouncy delay. But I'm also playing this paraphonically because there's a mode where you can put the Taiga into, which is, I'm trying to remember where it is, edit and A mode, and that will take you to paraphonic on this one. And then the velocity CC comes out as a separate gate, so you can patch the gate and CV into oscillator 1, or sorry, the CV into oscillator 1, and then the velocity into oscillator 2, which gives us this paraphonic. But I'm also using the function generator to come out of here and go into the dynamic response. So that's basically affecting this, opening up. But before I get into the dynamics in, I'm taking the output of the mixer and going into this gaining, so I'm gaining it up. So I can actually add, and we can add a bit of low pass gate resonance into this. sort of destroy it. But if I want, I can take that out. And then I've got the filter going into the dynamic. Let's put the arpeggiator on, because that'll be in time with the clock. That's interesting. Now let's try, we're coming out, I've got the gate out of here, which I can run into. Maybe I can put that into. Maybe if I come out of arpeggiator mode. So now the gate is going into Fulsome Clouds and adding to the texture, or I could go maybe into. So that's now triggering the mix of the reverb, because I've got the blend set to the reverb blend. Oh, that's nice. It's interesting, isn't it? It's like, what do you want to use that 24 HP for? We were talking on the podcast yesterday with Richard Nicol, who's the designer of this instrument, along with the team at Pittsburgh Modular. And it was kind of like almost, you know, I chose to put Fulsome Clouds in it, but you might choose to put something else. I mean, this isn't really a Eurorack case. It's a synthesizer with some extra space. So if you live with the Taiga for a little while, and then think, well, what is it that I want? Because some people may want marbles, or, you know, a disting or whatever. There are limitations to the depth that you can get in here, but ultimately the world is your oyster, and it's quite interesting how you could build a more bespoke workflow and concept around whatever you might want to put in there. Okay, this sound is quite a nice bass sound. And what I'm doing is, let's just take this down. I've got a pulse width modulation, just getting its speed from 2. Then oscillator 3 is just a sawtooth. But oscillator 2 is going again into that drive stage. And this is in a sawtooth, and I'm using the 5-volt output to affect both the filter frequency and the shape. So that gets a really nice. But this does lead to, there's a couple of little foibles which I feel I should mention, and this is the same in the original Taiga as well. There is no legato envelope mode. So every note trigger is an envelope trigger. There's no way to have a legato mode, which would have been nice, because it would be nice to be able to kind of sort of decide when I want that envelope trigger to play. It gives me a little bit more performative sort of stuff. It's not a biggie, but it's just worth mentioning. Also, one other thing is just the sort of control law on some of these controls. That's no release. That's considerable amount. And then, so, I mean, effectively, much of the control of this release portion is moot. You know, it feels like maybe the control law, I'd like to have more sensitivity here, then a sort of midpoint, and then higher sensitivity here. It's just one of those things, and that's just something that you do notice. But that tearing, also, I'm actually modulating. We've got the triangle coming out, going into the delay. Got a bit of clouds delay on here, but I'm actually had a lot of regen. Take that up a little bit. I'm modulating the time from the triangle out of LFO2. It's a very crunchy kind of delay. You can hear that sort of breaking up. I prefer the fulsome clouds for this particular sound. So I think it's time to wrap things up. The Pittsburgh Modular Taiga Keyboard is certainly, in my opinion, quite an improvement over the original. But it's not in terms of function, it's in terms of form. The form makes a lot more sense. It makes it a more enjoyable instrument to interact with. Obviously, you can still buy the Taiga module, and that will be considerably cheaper. I think it's about 800 quid, whereas the Taiga Keyboard is around $12.99 US, roughly, which is about 11.50 UK. So, I mean, it's not a cheap thing, but I think you're getting a fairly reasonable amount of synthesizer for that money. And bearing in mind, we've also got, you know, what will you do that with that 24 HP? You can create a kind of a really sort of custom extensible synthesizer that may just do exactly what you need to do by the addition of a few things, like maybe a couple of VCAs, so you could have the velocity going to the envelope depth, things like that. There's all sorts of stuff that you could do. I've still got, what's that, 8 or 6 HP spare here, and there's 3 slots for the module. So overall, I think this is a great addition to the Pittsburgh line. I do like the form factor, and I think the price is reasonable too. And if it's the sort of sound that you're after, this kind of really interesting, complex oscillator at the heart of it, and we've got 3 of these, and we can play paraphonically, their jobs are good. Anyhow, that wraps it up. Just want to say, if you fancy supporting us on Patreon, this is available ad-free, and I think I'll be posting like a sample instrument or 2. Just take some samples from this so you can enjoy it in the privacy of your own home. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time.